Hi students, this is Cantor Liz, here to talk to you about something challenging today. In Jewish history, we have a number of holidays that focus on our persecution and our survival. Purim is one. Haman wanted to kill us, but Esther saved the day. Passover is another. We were slaves in Egypt, but with God's help, we were freed. In these weeks between Passover and the next festival, Shavuot, we count each day. It's called counting the Omer. An Omer was a measure of grain brought to the temple every day. During the first few weeks, we have what Israelis call the modern high holidays. We're used to that term with our fall holidays of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, a time of introspection and self-evaluation. The modern high holidays are all historical commemorations of important events in Jewish history that happened in the last 100 years. The first is Yom HaShoah, which is the subject of this video. The other days are Yom HaZikaron, Israel's Memorial Day for fallen soldiers, and Yom HaAtzmaut, Israel's Independence Day, which is the day after Yom HaZikaron. The first of these commemorations is Yom HaShoah. Shoah is a word that means catastrophe and is the Hebrew word used for the Holocaust. Not everyone may be familiar with the Holocaust, so I want to take a moment to tell you what it was. In Germany, they elected a leader named Adolf Hitler, who managed to take over the government and become a dictator. The democracy was no longer able to function. He had a vision for an ideal race in Germany, the Aryan race, and Jews, and Roma, formerly known as Gypsies, disabled people, homosexuals, none of these people fit in Hitler's ideal. They were systematically persecuted through more restrictive laws and often killed. They were restricted from attending school, owning businesses. They were eventually thrown out of their homes and put in ghettos, and eventually they were taken to internment camps. Many were treated as slave labor, and many more were sent to be killed. Over the course of World War II, many millions were killed. 6 million European Jews were killed, which was about 2/3 of the European Jewish population at the time. In some cases, whole Jewish communities were wiped out. Entire families were exterminated. Jews had lived in Europe for more than 2,000 years. The American Jewish Yearbook placed the total Jewish population of Europe at about 9.5 million in 1933. This number represented more than 60% of the world's Jewish population, which was estimated at 15.3 million. Most European Jews resided in Eastern Europe, with about 5.5 million Jews living in Poland and the Soviet Union. Before the Nazi takeover of power in 1933, Europe had a dynamic and highly developed Jewish culture. In little more than a decade, most of Europe would be conquered, occupied, or annexed by Nazi Germany, and most European Jews, 2 out of every 3, would be dead. Yom HaShoah is about remembering this event in history. Here in the United States, we generally call it by its shortened name, Yom HaShoah, as I've been mentioning. However, in Israel, it's known as Yom HaShoah Ugvura. It's a day to remember the destruction of the Holocaust and also the heroism that was involved. People resisted, people survived, people fought. There were survivors. Some survived the work camps, some survived by hiding in caves or the forest and fighting in a resistance brigade. Some survived by being sent away from their parents to England on a train called the Kinder Transport. Others were taken in by families who were not Jewish. And when the war ended, they didn't know they were Jewish since they lived as a Christian for a few years and were so young. I like the way this particular website has broken down all of the different people involved in the Holocaust. It's from the College of Education at the University of South Florida. There were victims, there were perpetrators, there were bystanders, there were resistors, there were rescuers, liberators, and survivors. Take a moment to read each description. There are many, many stories about the Holocaust. They're heroic, sad, angering, challenging, thought-provoking. There are first-hand accounts that I encourage you to read in books written for many different age groups. As you continue to learn about the Holocaust through your life, each year you will be able to uncover another layer of information and look at it through another lens. Originally, there was a disagreement about what date that Yom HaShoah Ugvura would be observed on. Some people did not want to give a special date on the calendar. They didn't want to give the Shoah its own commemoration and wanted to combine the sad moment with a day we already have on the calendar, the 9th of Av. Tisha B'Av, which is a major fast day when we mourn the destruction of the two temples in Jerusalem and the traumas of the Inquisition and pogroms. It's the only other day when we fast for 25 hours as we do on Yom Kippur. Others wanted it on a minor fast day, the 10th of Tevet, which is also tied to the destruction of the temples. That's a minor fast when we fast only from sunup to sundown. Still others thought January 20th would be a good date. This is when the Nazis came up with the final solution. Others thought January 27th, which is when Auschwitz was liberated, which was one of the most active death and labor camps. And yet others wanted to tie it to Passover on April 19th, when there was an uprising, a showing of resistance in the Warsaw Ghetto that year. In the international arena, January 27th, the day of the liberation of Auschwitz, is observed. In the US government, April 28th and 29th were decided to be days of commemoration. But on the Jewish calendar, they decided on a date that would not ever fall on a Shabbat and would not tinge the celebratory nature of Passover. So they decided on the 27th of Nisan, which is soon after Passover is over. In Israel on this date, there are 2 minutes of silence when the country comes to a standstill while a siren blares. Silence can be interpreted in different ways. Here's a poem by a survivor named Eli Wiesel, The Silence of the Bystander. Silence. Where in this Holocaust is the word of God? The world was silent. The world was still. And now, survivors stammer, Their words are haunted. Behind their words, silence. Behind the silence, a witness to the sin of silence. And in the camps and streets of Europe, mother and father and child lay dying. And many looked away. To look away from evil, is this not the sin of all good people? Mr. Wiesel brings up very hard questions. Here are some to consider. I encourage you to stop for a moment and discuss these as a class. There is another kind of silence, though. Rabbi Yehuda of the village Geboria said, "It is written in the Psalms, silence is the highest praise." And Rav Dimia, when he came to Babylonia from Eretz Yisrael, similarly said, "They say there in Eretz Yisrael, a word is worth a selah, and silence is worth two." In the Aruch HaShulchan, which is a law code, they write, "Those who come to comfort a mourner should not say anything until the mourner has spoken, as it is written in Job that his friends came to him to comfort him, and they said nothing to him. Then it says, he began to speak, and only later did Eliphaz the Yemenite respond. And it seems to me that the essence of this matter is that in comforting mourners, we are helping them to accept the judgment of the Holy One, blessed be He. As it says in Job, God gave and God took away, blessed be the name of God. And he was comforted from his grief. Here are some more questions to consider at this time in comparing these two different interpretations of silence and the power that it holds. On another tape, I have a short candle lighting ceremony for Yom HaShoah. As I light the candles, I will sing a song sung by those who lived at the time of the Holocaust. The story goes that it was composed on a train on the way to Auschwitz. The words are Ani ma'amin, be'emunah shlema. I believe with complete faith, b'viat HaMashiach, in the coming of the Messiah. Ve'af al pi sheyitmamea, im kol zeh ani ma'amin. Even though the Messiah tarries, I believe the Messiah will come. Ani ma'amin. It is a text of hope. After I light the candles, I will recite an El Malei Rachamim, a prayer praying for those who perished in the Holocaust. And we will have a short moment of silence. I encourage you to explore websites like our local Illinois Holocaust Museum and Education Center, the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, and many other states have their own Holocaust museums and memorials. There are survivor testimonies online, documentaries, films, books, artworks, poetry, diaries, and journals. There are many ways to learn about the Holocaust. There isn't much way to make sense of it all. But the important thing is that we keep the memory of it alive. As the survivors are passing away, which is happening almost every day now, it's up to us, the next generations, to continue the lessons and to not be bystanders, but be upstanders. Be people who will speak up in the face of injustice and make a difference in the world. Join me in the other video for a short ceremony.